It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to a very feel-good morning this morning. It's been fantastic. We've had some mass hysteria. Yes, now it's time to quieten it down a little bit, turn our attention to health matters. And we've got Cindy Chin, who is the Woolies dietitian, to explore what sounds like an incredibly exciting new online healthy living hub. And of course, you're one of the experts that we can plug into, which really is a great development. And I think we are looking at the way we approach our food a lot more holistically. Now, one word that seems to be coming up so often, gluten. Please, for the uninitiated, what is gluten exactly?
Yeah, great question. Gluten is the protein that you typically find in common cereals like wheat, barley, rye, and it's what gives dough that rubbery, elastic texture. So you'll see something that doesn't contain gluten, for instance, it won't be as puffy and voluminous as your regular breads.
Who should be adhering to a gluten-free diet? How do we know?
So that's a tricky thing, because often people do almost self-diagnose, but you'll find the symptoms are typically gastrointestinal, so it's cramping, bloating, diarrhea, you get the picture.
Yeah.
But to make entirely sure, it's always best to get the advice of a medical practitioner, so a gastroenterologist, and they can then diagnose you properly to see if you actually do have something called celiac disease or gluten-sensitive enteropathy. And in that instance, it's actually a medical condition where if you do eat even small amounts of gluten, you can get an immune response, and that can lead to a whole lot of other diseases or nutrient deficiencies.
I suppose because we've introduced gluten very late in our kind of evolutionary cycle, and we've been bombarding for the last few thousand years, we've had a massive uptake in wheat. How prevalent is it in South Africa? How many of us are affected by it?
Well, to be honest, to my knowledge, we haven't actually done the numbers in South Africa, and it's probably underdiagnosed. But in Europe, where it's far more common, in Sweden, for instance, it's 1 in 200, as much as that.
Wow.
In Denmark, 1 in 10,000. So I think in South Africa, it's probably underdiagnosed, and we haven't actually done proper statistics measurements on that.
I have to ask, is it healthier for us to be eating gluten-free anyway?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people do actually feel better eating less gluten in their diet, so they don't have those symptoms of bloating and discomfort.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, but there's actually no harm in eating gluten if you don't have a diagnosed condition. But that's the thing, sometimes you're not diagnosed. And the other trick is, if you want to have a proper diagnosis, don't exclude gluten and then go see the doctor, because they might miss, with time, you miss the diagnosis. Rather be eating it, having it as you would regularly, and then go for that test, and then you'll be able to pick it up much quicker.
Give them a real indication of where your health is. Okay, I'm looking at a lovely array of products, and Woolies really has broadened their range of products to meet every kind of dietary need. How do we start looking at our packaging? How do we start identifying what's got gluten in it, what's gluten-free, and just allergens in general?
Yeah, so if you've been following our series over the last month or so, we've been going through how to read a food label, and we'll always, by law, we have to actually indicate common allergens on the back of packaging anyway. So if a product does contain gluten, because that's one of the common allergens, it will state it at the back of the pack. And in this case, you'll see the little allergen panel.
I'm going to get this nice up close there, you guys can have a look.
And it says
there.
allergens, gluten, and that will then indicate that this product, which is barley, does in fact contain gluten. So always check your labels and be aware that they could be found in hidden ingredients like sauces and stocks and gravies. And so read the ingredient statement as well as read the allergen panel.
How do we go about balancing out substituting? Because these are, I think, sadly, a lot of it's comfort food. It's foods that we know and love. How do we approach substituting?
I think
gluten?
also, instead of only looking at products like cookies and those sort of treats that are great for if you have a special occasion and you're the one who has to omit the cupcakes because you can't eat gluten. So those are quite useful in that instance, especially for kids at parties and that sort of thing. But also look at, if you're taking out gluten, beware that those sort of foods like whole grains and that contain B vitamins and fiber. So make sure you put them,
balance,
put in other things like quinoa, for instance, which is a great source of fiber, your wild brown rice, those other grains and legumes and lentils that would then replace those nutrients that you might be missing out on if you don't eat gluten.
Cindy, thank you so much. I feel refreshed and a little less nervous about eating gluten-free looking at these chocolate chip cookies. But thank you so much. I think the hub that you guys have created is awesome, and I'm sure you're going to get a host of very health-conscious South Africans plugging into that. So thank you for your efforts there.
Thanks, Graham.
It's a pleasure. Well, ladies, I'm looking at what looks like a very delicious end result. Please take us to our baked French toast.